The massive warships appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning. There were 12 of them, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities. They moved with purpose, their dark hulls cutting through space like knives through water. The ships belonged to the Krethian Dominion, an empire that ruled over 300 star systems and countless billions of lives. Admiral Zekthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Fang. His scaled skin reflected the blue light of the control panels. His 4 eyes scanned the primitive system before him. Another backwater world, another easy tribute collection. He had done this 47 times before. It was always the same. The Dominion had discovered Earth 3 months ago when their long-range scouts picked up radio signals. The analysts had laughed at what they found. These humans still used chemical rockets. They still fought among themselves. They had barely left their own planet. It would be like taking candy from a child. "Admiral, we have translated their communication," said his second officer, a young Krethian named Velkor. "They call their planet Earth. Population approximately 8 billion. They have split into nearly 200 separate nations." Zekthor's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Still divided? They have not even achieved basic unity?" He shook his head. "This will be easier than I thought." The tribute demand was simple. It was always simple. The primitive species would provide resources, technology, and a percentage of their population to serve the Dominion. In return, the Dominion would allow them to continue existing. Most species understood this was a generous offer. The alternative was complete destruction. "Send the standard message," Zekthor ordered, translated into their primary languages. The message broadcast across all of Earth's communication channels. Television stations went dark and then showed the Admiral's face. Radio signals were overridden. Internet connections redirected to the same transmission. Zekthor spoke clearly, his words translated by advanced computer systems. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Zekthor of the Krethian Dominion. Your world has been found. Your system now belongs to the Dominion. You will provide tribute as follows: 60% of your rare Earth minerals, 40% of your water reserves, and 10 million of your population to serve as workers. You have 48 hours to comply. Resistance is not possible. Defiance will result in the complete destruction of your world. You have been warned." The transmission ended. Zekthor settled back in his command chair, satisfied. Now would come the panic, the desperate attempts at negotiation, and finally the submission. It happened every time, but something was wrong. The response came within an hour. That was unusual. Most primitive worlds spent days arguing among themselves before responding. The Krethians had expected chaos, maybe even some theatrical threats. Instead, a single transmission came from Earth. A human woman appeared on their screens. She wore a simple dark suit. Her face was calm, almost unnaturally calm. She identified herself as Ambassador Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Council. "Admiral Zekthor," she began. Her voice was steady. "We have received your message. We understand what you believe you are doing. We know you think we are helpless. We know your empire has done this many times before." She paused, and something in her eyes made several of the Krethian officers shift uncomfortably. "We are sending you this message once, and only once. Turn your ships around. Leave our system. Do not come back. This is not a negotiation. This is not a bluff. This is a warning given out of mercy, because we remember what it was like to be young and foolish. Run, Admiral. Run while you still can." The transmission ended. For a moment, there was complete silence on the bridge of the Eternal Fang. Then Velkor began to laugh. Within seconds, the entire bridge crew was laughing. Even Zekthor allowed himself a clicking chuckle. "Did she just threaten us?" Velkor gasped between laughs. "With what?" "Their chemical rockets." Zekthor wiped his eyes. "Oh, this is rich. They actually think they can frighten us." He composed himself and looked at his tactical officer. "Scan their orbital space. Show me their mighty defenses." The tactical officer worked his console. "Admiral, they have approximately 15,000 objects in orbit. Most appear to be communication satellites and space debris. We detect no heavy weapons platforms, no shield generators, no fleet assets of any significance. They have a few small space stations, nothing that poses any threat." "What about their ground forces?" Zekthor asked. "Divided among their nations. Approximately 30 million soldiers total. Using kinetic projectile weapons. No energy weapons. No power armor. Some nuclear weapons, but primitive fission and fusion designs. Nothing that could penetrate our shields. Zekthor nodded. It was exactly as expected. The human's warning was clearly desperation masked as bravado. Still, something about the woman's eyes bothered him. There had been no fear there. None at all. Send a response, he ordered. Tell them they now have 40 hours. Reduce it by 8 hours for their insolence. Make sure they understand this is their only chance. But even as the message was sent, Zekthor found himself reviewing the human's words. We remember what it was like to be young and foolish. What did that mean? And why had she said run with such certainty? He pulled up the cultural data his analyst had gathered. Humans had a violent history, but that was not unusual. Most species went through warfare before achieving unity. But as he read deeper, he began to see patterns that disturbed him. These humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. They had developed weapons capable of ending all life on their planet and had come within minutes of using them. They had fought 2 massive global wars in the span of just 30 years. They had turned warfare into a science, studying it, refining it, teaching it in their universities. There was a quote from one of their ancient texts that caught his attention. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. These humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other. They had learned every trick, every strategy, every dirty technique that led to victory. But they were still primitive, Zekthor reminded himself. Knowledge meant nothing without technology. A swordmaster armed with a blade could not defeat a soldier with a plasma rifle. It was that simple. Zekthor pushed his doubts aside. The ambassador's warning was just psychological warfare, an attempt to make him hesitate. It would not work. The Krathian Dominion had conquered 300 star systems. They had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. These humans were nothing special. Prepare the fleet for orbital bombardment positions, he ordered. If they have not responded with compliance in 40 hours, we will destroy their 5 largest cities. That usually convinces them to cooperate. The Eternal Fang and its sister ships began moving deeper into the solar system, heading toward the small blue planet. Behind them, they left their long-range communication arrays active, ready to call for reinforcements if somehow needed. But Zekthor did not expect to need them. He did not know that every move his fleet made was being tracked by thousands of sensors. He did not know that his ship's communications were being decoded and analyzed in real time. He did not know that deep beneath Earth's surface, in bunkers built during the Cold War and expanded over decades, human commanders were watching his approach with cold, calculated patience. The trap was already set. It had been set for 50 years, ever since humanity had looked up at the stars and asked themselves a single question. What if someone comes, and they are not friendly? Now they had their answer, and Admiral Zekthor was about to learn that humanity's greatest warning had not been empty words. It had been mercy. Admiral Zekthor could not sleep. This was unusual for him. After 47 successful tribute collections, he had learned to rest easy during the waiting period. But something about this situation gnawed at him like a parasite in his mind. He sat in his private quarters, reviewing the data his analysts had compiled about Earth. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. These humans were not like other primitive species the Dominion had encountered. Most species developed in relatively predictable ways. They formed communities, built cities, developed technology, and eventually reached for the stars. Along the way they had conflicts, but these were usually over resources or territory. Simple, understandable reasons. Humans were different. They fought for ideas. They killed each other over concepts that existed only in their minds. Religion, ideology, honor, pride. They had murdered millions of their own kind over abstract beliefs. What kind of species did that? The analyst reports painted a picture that should have been reassuring but somehow was not. Humans had no unified government until very recently. They had spent most of their history divided into tribes, kingdoms, and nations that constantly warred with each other. They should have been easy to conquer. Divided enemies always were. But there was a pattern in their history that troubled Zekthor. Whenever humans faced an external threat, they unified with frightening speed. During their Second World War, nations that had been bitter enemies for centuries suddenly became allies. They had transformed their entire economies into war machines in a matter of months. They had gone from peace to total war faster than any species Zekthor had studied. Computer, he said to his quarters AI system, show me human military doctrine. The screen filled with information. Zekthor's eyes widened as he read. These humans had developed warfare into an art form. They had generals who wrote books that were still studied thousands of years after the authors died. They had academies dedicated entirely to the study of conflict. They taught their children about war through games and stories. One document caught his attention. It was from a human military academy, discussing something called asymmetric warfare. The concept was simple but brutal. If your enemy is stronger, do not fight them on their terms. Use deception, guerrilla tactics, exploit weaknesses, make them bleed for every inch of ground. Zekthor found himself reading about human battles where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through tactics alone. A group of 300 warriors holding off an army of hundreds of thousands. A tiny island nation defeating a massive empire through superior naval strategy. Rebels with primitive weapons bringing down technologically advanced governments. The humans had a saying, quantity has a quality all its own. But they had another saying too. It is not the size of the dog in the fight. It is the size of the fight in the dog. Admiral, his communication system chimed. It was Velcor. We are detecting unusual activity on Earth. Zekthor returned to the bridge quickly. Report. The humans are not panicking as expected, Velcor said, confusion in his voice. Instead, they appear to be preparing. Preparing for what? They cannot possibly fight us. Unknown, Admiral. But our sensors are detecting massive data transfers between their military installations. Power signatures are increasing at facilities across their planet. And sir, they have gone completely silent on all civilian communication channels. No more television broadcasts, no more radio, no more internet chatter. It is like they all received orders at once. Zekthor felt a chill run down his spine. That was not the behavior of a panicking species. That was the behavior of a species going to war stations. What about their space assets? He asked. The same 15,000 objects we detected before. No changes. No new launches. Nothing that suggests a threat. But Zekthor was no longer reassured. He had read enough about human history to know they were masters of deception. In their Second World War, they had convinced an entire enemy army that an invasion would happen at one location, when they actually planned to attack somewhere completely different. They had used fake equipment, false radio transmissions, and even a fake army commander to sell the lie. What if those satellites were not what they appeared to be? Full spectrum scan, he ordered. I want to know what those satellites really are. The tactical officer worked his console for several minutes. Admiral, they are exactly what they appear to be. Communication satellites, weather monitors, navigation systems. We are detecting no weapon signatures, no unusual power readings. And the space debris? Just that, sir. Debris. Dead satellites, rocket stages, fragments from collisions. Zekthor wanted to believe it. But something in his gut told him he was missing something important. The 40-hour deadline was approaching. 20 hours had passed and Earth had sent no response. No pleas for mercy, no offers of negotiation. Just silence. Ominous, heavy silence. Zekthor called a meeting with his senior officers. They gathered in the strategy room, a circular chamber with holographic displays showing the solar system. I want opinions, Zekthor said. Something feels wrong about this situation. His weapons officer, a scarred veteran named Krath, spoke first. They are trying to intimidate us with silence, Admiral. It is a bluff. What can they possibly do? Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their ambassador's warning was very specific, Zekthor pointed out. She told us to run. Not to negotiate. Not to reconsider. To run. Fear tactics, Krath dismissed. If they had real weapons, they would have shown them by now. They would want to deter us, not play games. But the science officer, an old Krethian named Thelvan, shook his head slowly. I have been reviewing their scientific literature. These humans have theoretical knowledge far beyond their current technology. They understand concepts we only recently mastered. Quantum mechanics, relativistic physics, artificial intelligence. They know what is possible, even if they cannot yet build it. Knowing and doing are different things, Krath argued, are they? Thelvan pulled up a document. 70 years ago, humans theorized about atomic weapons. 12 years later, they had built and used them. 50 years ago, they had no computers. Now they have billions of them. Their technology advances at an exponential rate. What if they have been hiding their real capabilities? Why would they do that? Velcor asked, Zekthor answered, the pieces falling into place in his mind. Because they knew someone like us would come eventually. They have been watching the stars for a century, listening for signals. They knew they were not alone. What if they have been preparing for first contact? And what if they assumed it would not be friendly? The room fell silent. It was a chilling thought. Most species assumed aliens would be peaceful or at least rational. Humans, with their violent history, might have assumed the opposite. They might have been building weapons and defenses for decades, waiting for this exact scenario. We scan their planet regularly, Krath said. We would have detected large-scale weapons construction. Would we? Delvin challenged. These humans built entire cities underground during their Cold War period. They hollowed out mountains to hide their weapons. They became very good at concealing things. What if everything we are seeing is just the surface layer? Zekthor made a decision. Contact the Dominion High Command. Request a full battle fleet as backup. We will wait for reinforcements before proceeding. Admiral, Krath protested. That will take weeks. The High Command will question why we need help with a primitive species. It will damage your reputation. Better a damaged reputation than a destroyed fleet, Zekthor said firmly. Something is wrong here. I can feel it. But even as he gave the order, he knew it might be too late. The message to the Dominion would take 3 days to arrive and another 3 for the reinforcements to reach Earth. 6 days minimum. The deadline was in 20 hours. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the Krathian fleet's movements on a massive display screen. Around her, military commanders from every nation stood waiting. The room was calm, professional. Everyone knew their role. They are getting nervous, said General Morrison, the American commander. Their scanning patterns have changed. They are looking harder. Good, Chen said quietly. Let them look. Let them worry. Every hour they hesitate is another hour we prepare. Will they attack when the deadline expires? Asked General Volkov of Russia. They will, Chen confirmed. They have too much pride to back down now. But they will be cautious. They will start with a limited strike testing our defenses. That is when we show them the truth. And if this does not work? Asked General Zhang of China. Chen's expression was cold. Then we show them that humans do not go quietly into the night. We have survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear standoffs. We will survive this too, or we will make sure they remember the cost of trying to extinguish us. The countdown continued. 19 hours. 18 hours. 17 hours. Admiral Zekthor sat on his bridge staring at the blue planet below. Beautiful, peaceful, inviting. But he could not shake the feeling that he was looking at a predator pretending to be prey. 16 hours. 15 hours. 14 hours, the trap was set. The players were in position. And both sides knew that when the deadline expired, the universe would learn something new about the species called humanity. The deadline expired at exactly 0600 hours Earth Standard Time. For 60 seconds, nothing happened. The Krathian fleet held position in high orbit. The Earth below remained silent. 2 civilizations stared at each other across the void, waiting. Admiral Zekthor gave the order. Target New York City. Single plasma lance strike. Minimum power. Show them we are serious, but leave room for them to surrender. The Eternal Fang's main weapon charged with a high-pitched whine that echoed through the ship. The barrel glowed blue, then white. Energy readings spiked across every monitor. Firing, announced the weapons officer. The plasma lance shot toward Earth, a beam of superheated matter moving at nearly light speed. It would hit in 3 seconds. The city below would be vaporized instantly. 8 million people would die. It was supposed to be a demonstration of power. Then something impossible happened. Every satellite within 1,000 kilometers of the plasma lance activated at once. What the Krathians had dismissed as communication satellites suddenly moved with inhuman precision. They were not satellites at all. They were weapons platforms that had been disguised, waiting, hiding in plain sight for exactly this moment. Thousands of railguns fired simultaneously. The kinetic projectiles were simple tungsten rods, each weighing only a few kilograms. But they were accelerated to tremendous speeds. They did not try to stop the plasma lance. Instead, they created a cloud of metal directly in its path. The plasma beam hit the cloud and dispersed, its energy dissipating across thousands of impacts. The attack that should have destroyed a city was scattered into harmless radiation that burned up in the atmosphere. What just happened? Zekthor shouted. Admiral, those satellites are not satellites. They are weapons platforms. Thousands of them. Return fire! Destroy them! The Krathian fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams lanced out, targeting the disguised platforms. Many were destroyed immediately, blooming into small fireballs. But for every platform destroyed, 3 more activated. The humans had not deployed thousands of weapons in orbit. They had deployed tens of thousands, and they were not just defending anymore. The railguns turned their attention to the Krethian ships. Tungsten rods began hammering into the fleet's shields. Each impact was small, almost negligible. The shields were designed to absorb massive energy weapons. Kinetic impacts should have been useless, but the rods kept coming. Hundreds per second. Thousands per second. The shields were not designed for this kind of sustained kinetic bombardment. They began to flicker and fail. Shields at 70%, the tactical officer reported, alarm in his voice. 60%. 50%. Admiral, they are overwhelming our defenses through sheer volume. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of their firing arc! But there was no safe firing arc. The weapons platforms surrounded the fleet completely. The Krethians had flown into a sphere of hidden weapons, and now that sphere was contracting like a closing fist. Then the second wave hit. From Earth's surface, massive electromagnetic launchers activated. These had been hidden in mountains, disguised as mining operations and military bases. They fired larger projectiles, each one weighing several tons. These were not aimed at the fleet directly. They were aimed at where the fleet would be in 30 seconds, based on predicted evasive maneuvers. The humans had studied Krethian tactics from intercepted communications and historical databases. They knew how the fleet would react. They had wargamed every possible scenario. When the Eternal Fang dodged left to avoid one barrage, it flew directly into another. The first heavy projectile punched through the weakened shields and tore into the ship's hull. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Secondary explosions rippled through the lower decks. Hull breach on decks 15 through 20. Casualties reported. Shield generators 2 and 5 are offline. Zekthor gripped his command chair, mind racing. This was not possible. Primitive species did not fight like this. They were supposed to panic, to scatter, to die in confused chaos. This was coordinated, precise professional military action. All ships execute scatter pattern Omega. Get distance from the planet. 3 of his ships never received the order. Small craft, each no larger than a personal transport, swarmed them. The Krethian point defense systems opened fire, destroying dozens, but more kept coming. They were drones, Zekthor realized, unmanned, expendable, and they were gathering data. Every time a Krethian weapon fired, the drones recorded it. Every defensive response was cataloged. The humans were not trying to win with these drones. They were learning, adapting, feeding information back to their main systems. Admiral, we are detecting massive cyber intrusion attempts, the communications officer announced. Their AI systems are attacking our network infrastructure. Impossible. Our systems use quantum encryption. They could not possibly break it. They are not breaking it, sir. They are going around it. They are exploiting hardware vulnerabilities we did not know existed. Admiral, they are inside our secondary systems. I am cutting connections before they reach main controls. This was a nightmare. The Krethians had never faced cyber warfare like this. Most species considered computer attacks to be minor nuisances. Humans had weaponized them. They had AI systems specifically designed to attack, infiltrate, and destroy digital infrastructure. The fleet managed to pull back to medium orbit, leaving behind clouds of debris and the burning wrecks of destroyed weapons platforms. But the cost had been severe. 2 ships were badly damaged. Casualties were mounting. And worst of all, they had not inflicted any damage on Earth itself. Damage report, Zekthor demanded. Eternal Fang has lost 30% combat effectiveness. The Crimson Talon is venting atmosphere and has lost main propulsion. The Blood Price has lost all shields and is running on backup power. 847 casualties across the fleet. 43 dead, 43 dead. In a single engagement against a primitive species, it was humiliating. It was terrifying. Sir, Earth is transmitting. Ambassador Chen appeared on the screen again. Her expression had not changed. She still looked calm, almost sad. Admiral Zekthor, we warned you. You did not listen. What you just experienced was our opening move. Those were automated defense systems, no human pilots, no strategic decision-making. That was just our security system responding to an intruder. She paused, letting that sink in. You see those objects on your tactical display? The ones between Mars and Jupiter? Those are not asteroids, Admiral. Those are mass drivers. We have been building them for 30 years. Each one can accelerate a 1,000-ton projectile to 90% of light speed. You cannot dodge them. Your shields cannot stop them. If we fire them, your fleet will cease to exist. Zekthor felt his blood turn cold. Relativistic kinetic weapons. The ultimate nightmare of space warfare. Energy shields were useless against them. Point defense systems could not react fast enough. If the humans were telling the truth, his fleet was already dead. They just had not pulled the trigger yet. But we do not want to kill you, Chen continued. We are not murderers. We are not conquerors. We are survivors. We have spent 10,000 years fighting each other, learning every brutal lesson warfare can teach. We have built weapons that can destroy our entire planet 10 times over. We have nearly wiped ourselves out 3 times. We know what we are capable of, and it terrifies us. She leaned forward, her eyes boring into the camera. So we are offering you something we wish someone had offered us during our darkest hours. A chance to walk away. Leave our system. Tell your Dominion that Earth is not prey. Tell them we want peace, but we are ready for war. Tell them we did not start this fight, but we will finish it if we must. The transmission ended. Zekthor stared at the blank screen. His pride wanted to continue the attack. His training said retreat was unacceptable, but his instincts, honed over decades of combat, were screaming at him to run. Sir, the tactical officer spoke quietly. I have analyzed those objects near Mars and Jupiter. They are what she says they are. And Admiral, they are already aligned with our position. They are tracking our fleet. Velcor stepped close to Zekthor, speaking in a low voice. Admiral, if we continue this fight, we will lose. We need reinforcements. We need different tactics. This is not a defeat. This is a strategic withdrawal. Zekthor closed all 4 of his eyes. Everything he had been taught said primitives could not do this, but the evidence was floating around his ship in the form of debris and bodies. These humans were not primitive. They were something else entirely. They were a species that had been preparing for this exact scenario for generations. Helm, he said quietly. Set course out of the system. Best possible speed. Admiral, Krath protested. We cannot just leave. We can and we will. We are outmatched, outprepared, and outthought. The humans are right. This was just their opening move. Do you want to see what happens when they stop holding back? The Eternal Fang turned away from Earth, its sister ships following. The humans did not fire their mass drivers. They simply watched as the Krethian fleet retreated, limping toward deep space. In the bunker, General Morrison turned to Ambassador Chen. Should we finish them? No, Chen said firmly. We made our point. Let them carry the message. Let the galaxy know that Earth is not easy prey. She looked at the retreating ships on the display. The journey back to Dominion space took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence aboard the damaged fleet. 3 weeks of treating the wounded and repairing what could be repaired. 3 weeks of Admiral Zekthor staring at battle reports that should not exist. The Crimson Talon had to be abandoned. Its reactor was failing, and the crew evacuated to the other ships. They watched through view screens as the great warship, which had served the Dominion for 70 years, drifted dead in space. They could not even give it a proper destruction. They needed every weapon and every bit of power to ensure they made it home. Zekthor spent those 3 weeks writing his report. He rewrote it 17 times. Each version sounded more unbelievable than the last. How could he explain that a primitive species had defeated a Dominion tribute fleet? How could he make the High Command understand that these humans were different from every other species they had encountered? He decided to let the recordings speak for themselves. Every moment of the battle had been captured by the ship's sensors. The High Command would see exactly what happened. They would see the trap, the hidden weapons, the precision of the human response. They would see a Dominion fleet forced to retreat. When the fleet finally arrived at the border station of Keth Prime, word of their defeat had already spread. The station commander stared at the damaged ships with all 4 eyes wide. Whispers followed Zekthor as he walked through the station corridors. Defeated by primitives, beaten by a species that still used chemical rockets. The summons to the Dominion capital came immediately. Zekthor was ordered to present himself before the High Command Council within 2 days. He went without argument, knowing his career was likely over. Better to face judgment than to run from it. The High Command chambers were exactly as intimidating as they were meant to be. 12 seats arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by the greatest military minds in the Dominion. At the center sat Grand Admiral Kethran, a legend who had conquered 40 systems personally. He was old now, his scales graying, but his eyes were still sharp. Admiral Zekthor, Kethran's voice echoed through the chamber. You have returned from a routine tribute collection with 2 ships damaged beyond repair, over 500 casualties and nothing to show for it. Explain. Zekthor stood straight, meeting the Grand Admiral's gaze. Honored Council, I can explain, but I believe the battle recordings will speak more clearly than my words. Permission to present evidence? Granted. The lights dimmed. Holographic displays filled the chamber. The Council watched in silence as the battle unfolded before them. They saw the disguised weapons platforms activate. They saw the kinetic bombardment that overwhelmed the fleet's shields. They saw the swarm of drones gathering tactical data. They saw the massive mass drivers pointed at the fleet like guns to a head. When the recordings ended, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Catherine spoke. Play that section again, the part where their satellites activate. The recording rewound and played. The council members leaned forward, studying every detail. They disguised weapons platforms as civilian satellites, noted Admiral Velshara, the council's intelligence expert. That requires long-term planning. They would have needed years, possibly decades, to deploy that many units without drawing attention. And the kinetic weapons, added Admiral Krathnor, weapons specialist, using mass rather than energy to bypass our shields. It is brutally simple. Why did we not consider this tactic? Because it is wasteful, answered Admiral Tekval. Kinetic weapons require massive amounts of material and energy. They are inefficient compared to plasma weapons. Only a species with excess industrial capacity would consider it. Or a species that knows their enemy will underestimate them, Kethran said quietly. He turned to Zekthor. You spoke with their ambassador. What was your impression? She was calm, Grand Admiral. Unnaturally calm. She warned us to leave before we even made our threat. She knew this would happen. They planned for this. For us specifically? No, Grand Admiral. For anyone who might come. They call it first contact doctrine. They assumed that if they met an alien species, there was a significant chance that species would be hostile. So they prepared for the worst case. Velshara pulled up human historical data on her console. This matches their history. They have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. During their Cold War period, they built enough weapons to destroy their entire planet several times over. They created massive underground bunkers to survive nuclear war. They even sent messages into space with maps showing where their planet was, while simultaneously building weapons to defend it. They are simultaneously optimistic and paranoid. That is not a common combination, Kethran observed. Most species are one or the other. Humans appear to be a species of contradictions, Velshara continued. They are fiercely individualistic yet capable of massive collective action. They are self-destructive yet incredibly resilient. They create art and music celebrating peace while simultaneously perfecting the science of war. Another council member, Admiral Zorth, spoke up. What of their claimed mass drivers? The relativistic weapons? Were those real or a bluff? Our analysis suggests they were real, Zekthor answered. The structures match the theoretical designs for such weapons, and their targeting was perfect. They were tracking our fleet continuously. Relativistic kinetic weapons. Kethran sat back in his seat. Do you understand what that means? If they have built even a few of those, they possess city-killer weapons that cannot be intercepted. They could strike at targets light years away with enough warning time. The implications hung heavy in the air. Relativistic weapons were considered theoretical nightmares. The energy requirements were enormous, and the calculations required to hit a moving target across interstellar distances were incredibly complex. But if the humans had them, if they were willing to build them, it meant they thought on a longer timeline than most species. What do we know about their current military capacity? Kethran asked. Velshar brought up more data. Based on their communications and our observations, they have approximately 30 million active military personnel. 200 million reservists. They have weapons manufacturing capacity spread across their entire planet, making it impossible to destroy with a single strike. They have decentralized command structures, meaning no single leadership location controls everything. They have prepared for decapitation strikes, Tekval noted grimly. They expect enemies to target their leaders first, so they built systems that can continue fighting even if command is destroyed. That is the behavior of a species that has fought total war, Catherine said. Most species have conflicts, but few experience the kind of existential warfare that requires such measures. These humans have been tested by their own violence and survived. Zorth leaned forward. Grand Admiral, what are you saying? That we cannot defeat them? I am saying that defeating them would be far more costly than anticipated. They are a young species, but they have learned lessons it took us millennia to understand, and they learned them the hard way, by nearly destroying themselves repeatedly. Catherine stood pacing slowly before the council. Let me tell you what I see in these recordings. I see a species that thinks like we do, but with less honor and more pragmatism. They did not challenge us to honorable combat. They set a trap. They used deception. They exploited our assumptions about primitive species. He turned to face the council directly, and it worked. They defeated us without even deploying their full military. What we fought was their automated defense system. Their actual military forces never engaged. Do you understand? We lost to their security system. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Put that way, the defeat was even more humiliating. Furthermore, Catherine continued, they let us go. They could have destroyed our fleet completely. Those mass drivers could have killed us all, but they chose not to. The question is why? Zekthor spoke up. The ambassador said they are not murderers or conquerors. She said they are survivors. I believe she was telling the truth, Grand Admiral. They did not want to fight us. They wanted to discourage us. By bloodying our nose enough that we would think twice about returning, Catherine finished. It is actually quite clever. If they had destroyed us completely, we might have sent a larger fleet out of anger. By defeating us but letting us live, they send a different message. We are strong enough to defend ourselves, but we are not your enemy unless you make us one. Belshara nodded slowly. It is a sophisticated diplomatic strategy wrapped in a military demonstration. They are offering us a choice. Leave them alone and we can coexist, or press the attack and find out just how dangerous they really are. So what do we do? Zorth asked. We cannot simply ignore them. If word spreads that a primitive species defeated a Dominion fleet, our authority will be questioned throughout our territory. Word has already spread, Belshara said. The station at Keth Prime knows. By now half the Dominion has heard rumors. We cannot contain this information. Kethran returned to his seat, steepling his clawed fingers. Then we do not try to hide it. We reclassify Earth system, make it an interdiction zone. No approach without explicit council authorization. We tell our people that Earth is under quarantine due to dangerous anomalies. 3 months after the battle, Earth was beginning to relax. The military remained at high alert, but civilian life had mostly returned to normal. People went to work, children went to school, and the world turned as it always had. But something fundamental had changed. Humanity now knew with certainty that they were not alone in the universe, and that the universe could be hostile. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in her office at the United Earth Council headquarters in Geneva, looking out at the peaceful city below. Her assistant entered quietly, carrying a data tablet. Ambassador, we are receiving signals from multiple sources. They are not from the Crethean Dominion. Chen turned, interested. Who then? They identify themselves as the Coalition of Free Worlds. They are requesting diplomatic contact. The message is friendly, respectful. They congratulate us on our successful defense against the Dominion. Chen felt a smile cross her face. So the galaxy noticed. It appears so. The message indicates they have been monitoring Dominion activities for decades. They saw what happened here. They are impressed. What do they want? To talk. They suggest we might have common interests. Chen took the tablet and read the message herself. The Coalition of Free Worlds represented over 100 star systems that had refused to join the Dominion. They were not a military alliance like the Dominion, but rather a loose confederation of species that preferred independence and cooperation over conquest and tribute. Prepare a response, Chen said. Tell them we are willing to establish communication, but make it clear we are not looking to join any existing power blocks. We are interested in friendship and trade, not military alliances. Not yet anyway. Yes, Ambassador. As the assistant left, Chen returned to the window. The battle with the Dominion had proven something important. The weapons and systems humanity had built actually worked. The decades of preparation had not been wasted, but it had also revealed how close they had come to disaster. If the Dominion had sent a larger fleet or if they had been more cautious, the outcome might have been different. Earth needed allies. Not masters, not empires to submit to, but partners. Species who understood that the galaxy was big enough for everyone if they could just learn to coexist. Across the solar system, the defensive network was being upgraded. The weapons platforms that had been disguised as satellites were now openly acknowledged. New platforms were being built, no longer hidden. Humanity had shown its teeth. There was no point in pretending to be harmless anymore. The mass drivers between Mars and Jupiter were being expanded. Engineers were already designing next-generation versions that could accelerate projectiles to 95% of light speed. The mathematics were challenging, but human computer scientists were making breakthroughs in AI that helped solve the targeting problems. On Mars, the first permanent colony was celebrating its 5th anniversary. 2,000 people now called the Red Planet home. They worked in factories and laboratories, helping to build the ships and weapons that protected Earth. The colony had been started partly as a backup plan. If Earth was ever destroyed, humanity would survive on Mars, but it had become something more. Proof that humans could thrive beyond their homeworld. In the asteroid belt, mining operations were extracting materials at an unprecedented rate. The tungsten for kinetic weapons, the rare earth elements for electronics, the ice for water and fuel. Humanity was rapidly industrializing their entire solar system, turning it into a fortress that could produce everything needed for defense. But not everyone was focused on military matters. Scientists continued their research into peaceful applications. Medical technology was advancing rapidly, with new treatments for diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Fusion power was becoming practical for civilian use, promising clean energy for everyone. Art and music flourished as people tried to process the enormity of what had happened. Humanity had met aliens, fought them, and won. Now they had to figure out what came next. Admiral Zekthor, thousands of light years away, was trying to understand that same question. His assignment as Earth specialist had consumed his life. He had spent 3 months studying everything available about humans. Their history, their art, their philosophy, their wars. The more he learned, the more complex the picture became. These humans had nearly destroyed themselves at least 3 times. During their Cold War, they had built enough nuclear weapons to render their planet uninhabitable. They had come within minutes of launching them on multiple occasions. Computer errors, miscommunications, and human judgment had been all that stood between humanity and extinction. But they had survived. They had stepped back from the brink. They had learned to talk to each other, to negotiate, to find common ground even with bitter enemies. It had not been easy. It had taken decades, but they had done it. Now Zekthor understood why they had prepared so thoroughly for hostile first contact. They knew what they were capable of. They knew how easily things could go wrong, so they had prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. It was a kind of wisdom born from tragedy. He was writing a comprehensive report on human psychology and culture for the Dominion Council. The report was already 500 pages long and growing. One section focused on human military philosophy. Humans, he wrote, do not view warfare as glorious. They view it as necessary evil at best and horrific tragedy at worst. They honor their soldiers not for killing enemies but for their sacrifice and courage. They build monuments to peace even as they maintain armies. This duality is central to understanding them. They are warriors who dream of a world without war. Another section discussed human creativity. They tell stories constantly. Stories about heroes and villains, about love and loss, about triumph and failure. Many of their stories warn about the dangers of first contact with hostile aliens. They have been imagining this scenario for over a century, writing books and making films about alien invasions. When we arrived, they were not surprised. They were prepared because they had been thinking about it their entire lives. The report included recommendations. Do not underestimate them. Do not assume their technology level indicates their capability. Do not threaten them unless prepared for total war. But also do not assume they want war. They are tired of fighting. They are looking for partners, not enemies. Approach them with respect, and they will respond with respect. Grand Admiral Kethron read the report with great interest. He shared sections of it with the other council members. Some dismissed Zekthor's conclusions as too sympathetic to the enemy. Others saw the value in understanding humanity's perspective. Kethron was in the second group. He had lived long enough to know that the strongest empires were not built on conquest alone. The Dominion had grown powerful by forcing others to submit. But there were limits to that strategy. Eventually, you ran out of species to conquer, or you met one that could not be conquered. Earth appeared to be the latter. Prepare the diplomatic mission, Kethron ordered. But do it carefully. Send respected negotiators, not military officers. Send gifts, not threats, and make it clear we come to establish dialogue, not to make demands. The mission would take months to prepare and months more to reach Earth. In the meantime, the galaxy was changing. Word of Earth's successful defense had spread far and wide. Species that had submitted to the Dominion were quietly wondering if resistance was possible. The coalition of free worlds was growing bolder, knowing there was at least one species that could stand up to the Dominion and survive. Some called it the Earth Effect. A small blue planet had done what many thought impossible. They had said no to an empire and made it stick. It gave hope to others who had wanted to resist but lacked the courage. Not everyone was happy about this development. Some Dominion hardliners wanted to assemble a massive fleet and crush Earth as an example. They argued that allowing this insult to stand would encourage rebellion across the Empire. Kethron fought against these proposals in every council meeting. Starting a war with Earth would be expensive, bloody, and might not even succeed. And even if they won, what would they gain? A devastated planet and a galaxy full of species that feared and hated the Dominion more than ever. Better to adapt, Kethron argued. Better to show that the Dominion could be reasonable. Better to turn a potential enemy into a neutral party, or even eventually into an ally. It was a hard sell. The Dominion had built its power on fear. Showing weakness was dangerous. But Kethron was not suggesting weakness. He was suggesting wisdom. Know when to fight and when to negotiate. Earth had demonstrated they were willing to fight. Now it was time to see if they were willing to talk. On Earth, Ambassador Chen received confirmation that a Dominion diplomatic mission was being prepared. The news was met with mixed feelings. Many humans wanted nothing to do with the Dominion. The Crethians had threatened to kill millions of people. Forgiveness would not come easily. But Chen understood the bigger picture. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Humanity could not afford to make enemies of everyone. If the Dominion was willing to establish peaceful relations, it was worth exploring. Not friendship, not yet, but perhaps mutual respect. Perhaps eventually something more.